Hey everyone, welcome back to AWS On Air for Hybrid Cloud and Edge Day 2023. My name is Jeff Marushak. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect on our Department of Defense Air Force team. And I'd like to pass it over to my co-host, Adrian. Will you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, Adrian San Miguel, Principal Partner, Enterprise Architect here at AWS, and much like Jeff, definitely not a bot, as has been insinuated in the chat. Today we're joined by Amir, who I understand has got some pretty interesting things to talk about in the realm of product management as far as telco goes. Amir, would you mind introducing yourself?
Thanks, really, folks. I appreciate it and really excited to be here. You know, when we think about AWS infrastructure, majority of our customers today are being served by AWS regions, our availability zones. But yes, we also recognize that there are a significant part of our customers who would require AWS services closer to either where they are or where their end users are. And this is driven by various needs. This is driven by latency requirements of their workloads. This is driven by content delivery and content consumption needs. And this is driven by the local data processing requirements. It could be a function of regulatory requirements. It could be a function of technical requirements or purely business requirements. This has resulted in AWS extending our cloud services, our edge compute and networking services across the spectrum, closer to where our end users are, closer to where their end customers are, across different metropolitans around the world, and then within the data centers in the telco networks. We enable this through content delivery services like Amazon CloudFront and AWS compute and networking services like AWS Local Zones, AWS Outposts, and AWS Wavelength Zones.
Yeah, as we heard in the keynote, businesses today want to utilize and take advantage of all the optimizations of cloud computing, no matter where. Like I said just recently, no matter where your data workload is located, whether you're required to keep it in a certain area or not. But I gather that's especially important in local zones and telco networks.
Well, it is indeed a requirement.
Yeah, so if we can just back it up a little bit, Amir. Morbidly, just personal curiosity, I'm always interested in how we got to the genesis that said, hey, this is a good idea, let's go build it with AWS services. How did we go about doing this?
Well, it's a long history. In 2008, AWS launched Amazon CloudFront, and as a secure content delivery platform networks to allow our customers to easily create static websites, APIs, videos, and dynamic content, while ensuring both the low latency and high data transfer speeds. This actually was driven by demand of data across both and fixed mediums. You remember 3G and 4Gs and that part of the world. Today, we have over 500 Amazon CloudFront locations. When it comes down to edge compute, as early as in 2017, we began to realize that we really need to provide compute and networking services and the sameness that you talked about in terms of tools and services closer to end users. This actually resulted us in first announcing AWS Outposts, then announcing AWS Local Zone and AWS Wavelength Zone to meet the customer requirement closer to where they are, closer to where their end users are, and delivering that consistent experience, the consistent cloud experience. We do have a session to talk about AWS Outposts, but when you think about AWS Local Zones, this is serving the end customer's requirement across different metropolitan areas around the world, closer to where they are. And that is what we do in a fully cloud-native, fully managed cloud experience. Today, we have more than 35 AWS Local Zones around the world. And this is in addition to all of our regions and the edge infrastructure of Outposts. And then similarly, when we announced AWS Wavelength Zones, today we have more than 30 AWS Wavelength Zones to serve the 5G local low latency and high data bandwidth requirements.
Yeah, so that is great context, and it looks like over the next hour or so, we're going to see a bunch of topics on the things you just talked about, telco, maybe private 5G, outposts, et cetera, et cetera. So anything else to add as we wrap up here?
Yeah, over the next hour and the 3 sessions that are going to follow this one, we'll highlight how customers are innovating using AWS services closer to them. We'll talk about and dive deep on the low latency use cases with local zones, and take an example of a gaming experience, for instance.
Oh, you're going to like that.
We'll highlight how our customers are using the AWS Edge services for hybrid migrations. And then we'll finally highlight how you can build a machine learning application using wavelength zones and the promise of 5G low latency and throughputs.
That sounds pretty spectacular, Amir, and thanks so much for joining us today. As you mentioned, we're coming up with a pretty exciting slate. Next up is going to be deploying low latency applications at distributed edge. As you alluded, I'm a gamer. This is going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about it, and I hope you stick around. Thanks so much.